Did you know that the player who designed this super famous mob farm was hired by Mojang in 2021? Back in 2015, a professor with a Doctor of Philosophy in Computer Science from Poland started his YouTube channel where he analyzed game mechanics and created farms based on that. What he didn't know was that his discoveries would become so popular and have such a big impact on the community that Mojang would end up directly hiring him to help decide the future of Minecraft. That's right, I'm talking about Nembon, one of the most influential Minecraft players ever. Because of all he did, Mojang hired him. But this hasn't been the only case, so in this video we're going to look at all the cases of players who were so good that they ended up being hired by Mojang. We're probably going to talk about the most popular one on this list, which is Dinnerbone. I guess this is kind of the opposite case because you know Dinnerbone for being a Mojang developer. But what not everyone knows is that Dinnerbone was a Minecraft fan who used to make mods. And in 2012, Mojang hired him, and to this day, he is still one of the most important employees in the entire company. I guess you know him because if you put Dinnerbone on a name tag and right-click a mob, it turns upside down. By the way, in 2013, I took a screenshot of him on a server where I found him playing. I made a short about it and he wasn't upside down there. By the way, it was about 6 months later that his character appeared upside down. Okay, but how did they hire Nathan Adams, better known as Dinnerbone? Well, let's see. First of all, we have to go back obviously to 2011. He created what was called Bookit, which if you're old timers like me, you'll remember. You practically needed Bookit to create a server with any plugin. It was the predecessor of what we now know as Paper, Spigot, Forge, NeoForge. Actually, I didn't come here to bore you with this, but well, they're basically the framework that makes servers work. Let's leave it at that. He created the first framework. Or if you wanted to set up a server with some plugin in 2011 or 2012, you had to use Bookit, a pretty popular plugin called Stargate, which was just for making portals. They worked like nether portals, but didn't lead to the nether, just linked to each other, similar to the Portal game. That plugin was quite popular. As of 2026, it's a silly mod, a silly plugin, but back in the day it was important. Well, as I said, in 2012, they saw everything I had done. They were expanding the team because Mojang started to grow really fast and needed people, so they hired Dinnerbone, and the rest is history. He has been one of the most important employees at Mojang. There are several milestones he has achieved within the company, which is why he is still working there. For example, in version 1.3, he unified the single-player and multiplayer engines so that everything would work together. He also created the library that allows worlds to be updated from old versions to new ones. He changed the concept from texture packs to resource packs and made them much broader. They can also include sound, etc. And he was the director of version 1.9, a very important version. Elytras, shields, and many more things were added. And well, as I mentioned before, he has been one of the most influential players. His full name is, let's see, I'm probably going to say it wrong. It's Jacek Wolkowicz. As I said, he's Polish. He has a Doctor of Philosophy in Computer Science, and he has 10 scientific papers published. In fact, I've seen that some of them analyze social network data and such. They're very interesting. Honestly, I see this as a golden opportunity for Mojang. In the end, you have a Doctor of Philosophy in Computer Science who not only understands programming like no one else, but also understands your game like no one else. And just so you get an idea, why did Nembon become so famous in the technical community? And well, he even ended up being invited to SciCraft and everything, so why did he become so famous? Because his videos weren't just a farm where he'd tell you, here, build this iron farm. Instead, he'd make a 30-minute video explaining why villagers spawn a golem, how many they need to be, and he'd explain the variables in the code, like the 60-second cooldown, the exact range where the monster has to be. He explains the variables inside the game, and with that, he gives you the whole foundation to know how to make a farm, and then he goes and gives you the best iron farm. And if you look, all the iron farms that exist now are based on the original farm he made when the new iron farms came out. I mean, he has absolutely set the foundations. And not to mention the mob farm, everyone used to make some kind of variant of the mob farm. But he started analyzing optimization and made you a perfect farm. By the way, the redstone is super clever. It uses the water itself with the observers to send the signal. Looking at the water below without using redstone is crazy. And I still keep making that mob farm, and you guys have probably been making it for 10 years, and there just isn't a better one. There really isn't. And, well, another great contribution that Nembon made was creating the carpet mod. It's an incredible mod that nowadays absolutely the entire technical community uses. I still don't fully know how to use it because it has so many features. I assume you know about it. Typically, people use bots by spawning them in your world and assigning functions, but that's far from the most complex aspect. It has features like letting you monitor the lag in your game or your server. It also lets you monitor the mob caps to know if you've reached the number of hostile mobs, which is 70. And it tells you all the theory he explained about villagers, so you can activate it and see the villagers' stats above them. It's the ultimate mod for technical Minecraft. And what I'm saying is that sometimes it's even too complex. In this mod, he invented the tick command. If you've never used it before, you do tick freeze, for example, and it freezes the game. You can make the game run slower because normally 20 ticks happen in a second, right? Well, you can make it so only 10 ticks happen, or you can make 200 ticks happen and it goes faster. You can also stop the game and go tick by tick. That's really, really, really good for Redstone to see what happens. That command was so good that after being hired by Mojang, he quickly added it to the game. And I'm really happy because it's a very, very useful command. And now everyone has access to it. You don't have to know the mod. Obviously, it's not public what he has done in the game and what he hasn't. But, well, everyone more or less knows that, for example, the crafter was his idea. In the carpet mod, he had already tried to automate crafters. And besides, that's what the whole community was asking for. He was active in the community, and I think he did it. People say he may have worked on the sculpt sensors. As I said, we can speculate, but we never know exactly who does what. I know it's a team effort, and he's not the only contributor, but I'm sure he added more than one idea. I'm sure that many of his contributions made it into 1.19 like the sanction. But anyway, this is definitely not just thanks to him, but also to the developer KingBDawg. This developer is part of Mojang, and you probably know him because of this. Well, no, that's the portal you tried to make when you didn't have the mod installed. Actually, this is it. The Aether mod, which was very popular back in the day, was one of the first big Minecraft mods. We all had the canonical experience of trying to go to the Aether thinking it wasn't a mod, but it actually was. It happened to me. I admit it. Before being hired, this player had been developing mods for 10 years. He was hired in 2020, and apparently, he was in charge of designing the ancient cities. Overall, these have been well liked by the community. And I found something very interesting that he said after joining Mojang, because of course in the modding community, it's always been said that everything Mojang does can be done in a week. Everything they do in a year, a modder can do in 5 days. And this is something very controversial. In fact, you can see my gray hairs. But anyway, back in the day when they added wolves, a mod came out called Better Than Wolves. That is, Better Than Wolves. Because he had implemented an entire mod with a ton of content when Mojang had only added the wolves. And so, in this message, you see here, he says that after seeing both sides of the coin, developing at Mojang and developing a mod, it's not as easy as it seems. Obviously, a modder can make, for example, the Nether update in a week, but you can't do it inside Minecraft. And this is something that I think most people can see as logical. Making a mod for yourself is different from making one for a company, since it involves many factors. And what he says is that obviously something like this needs months and months of testing, trials, polishing, and design. And on the other hand, if you're making a mod, it can have some bugs, it can have design inconsistencies, and it's not a big deal. People will play your mod, they'll like it, and then move on to the next one. They might just say, change this, it's not working, and that's it. But when you're making an update for the best-selling game in history, obviously you can't leave anything unpolished. That's fine, but clearly neither side agrees. What do you think? Share in the comments. Do you think Mojang really makes enough quality updates, or could they add more content, or are they just being a bit lazy? But well, what is clear from these 3 cases is that the players hired by Mojang end up having a big impact. So hiring from within the community, I think that's a great move by Mojang. And there's a similar case, which is Panda 4994, whose name might sound a bit less familiar to you, but he's one of the pillars for making the game run properly and with less lag than a few years ago. Well, Panda 4994 was hired in 2020. But before that, he was kind of one of us. I mean, he was one of the most important members of ZipCrowd back in the day. I think it was the most important technical server before SciCraft. If you followed his channel then, he was one of the regulars. He was constantly implementing new farms or exploring new mechanics, playing with the new features that came out in new versions. Let's just say, like I said, one of the technical Minecraft guys, and he was really involved in the community. More well-known within the community, he made a lot of videos with Dokim77. Some of you might know him because he used to play or still plays. He's still in Hermitcraft and was part of Zip Crowd where they did a lot. I mainly remember him for the slime blocks since Mojang released them, and he said, look, you have a block there that's supposed to be sticky, and I think at most it would just bounce you. And that's it. Panda, along with other members of Zip Crowd, said, hey guys, brother, why don't we use this and make the slime blocks stick to other slime blocks, what property, and make them stick to other blocks? And indeed, they programmed that. And in the next snapshot, Mojang decided it was a great idea and implemented what they had programmed. They made slime blocks into what we know today, blocks that stick to each other and are used to make flying machines. And well, I really want to thank Mojang for listening to what was invented in Zip Crowd and what Panda invented. This decision opened up an entire world, which is what we call Slimestone, that allows us to, for example, I've made a working airplane, I've made a rocket, I've made machines that drain oceans. But really, the community has made airplanes, bombers, robots that move and walk. It's absolutely crazy. Houses that move on their own. A lot of crazy things have been made thanks to this decision. Well, later they also added the honey block. But anyway, this makes it really interesting because in the end, Minecraft is made by the community. Because pistons were a mod made by a guy, and Mojang decided to implement it. And then the slime blocks thing is also kind of a mod by Panda, and Mojang decided to implement it. Well, in the first case, they didn't hire him, but then in 2020, when they needed someone else, well, Panda was already on their radar. They knew him very well. He had even contributed, let's say, for free to the development of the game. I'm really glad, honestly, that he got that job. He's been involved in many things within the game. Well, engine stability, internal architecture, what I mentioned about improving frames per second and lag in general. And, well, it's said, it's believed, I don't know how true it is. But of course, in the end, he's an infiltrator from the technical community. They say he's been fighting a bit to make sure that the new things they add don't break important old farms. That makes sense to me. I think anyone from the technical community like him would probably do that for others if they were there. By the way, I'm not sure if I should mention this, but Mojang has a link for their job offers. I'm not sure if Panda and the others would apply themselves or if Mojang would reach out. They'd probably apply since there's a link for job openings and a lot of positions available. I'm a computer engineer, so I took a look at the job offers, but none of them really fit me. On one hand, I don't know if I would accept, but I think I would. I think if Mojang offered most of us a job, we would accept. But you should know that you must move to Sweden. This is a strict requirement from Mojang. Mojang operates in person, so if they hire you, relocation is mandatory. There's a really funny short where Nembon announces that he has started working at Mojang. And what he says is, well guys, I'm sorry. I haven't uploaded a video in months because I moved to Sweden for a new job. Moving always takes a lot of time. I don't know what else. He presses F5 showing his Mojang cape. I think it's a unique way to announce it. But I have to say, I heard about a similar case from someone in the community. I'm not naming them, but it's someone who has greatly contributed to the community, especially in understanding the code. I won't give too many hints to avoid exposing anyone, but I've heard they were offered a contract at Mojang. It wasn't worth it, since they'd have to move to Sweden. They declined because the salary difference was small and they already earn well in their country. I can understand that. If I were offered any job in Sweden, I wouldn't go unless it was at Mojang. Yeah, honestly, but I can understand it. Moving to a new country where it's cold and, no one is tough. There's also another story told in the community, but I won't say who it's about. They were to apply for a job at Mojang via this link and had several interviews. But they were rejected for being overqualified, which is something that to this day, I still don't understand why Mojang would reject you for being overqualified. There are a lot of people who are overqualified for their jobs, and I don't think Microsoft and consequently Mojang have any money problems. What's the problem? That you have to pay them a little more? Then you pay them a little more. But well, they probably had their reasons. I don't know how things work internally at Mojang. Maybe they just didn't want him for the position and that's it. Not all the players they hire are fully dedicated to Minecraft. The case of Slicedlime is a clear example because before working on Minecraft in 2017, he worked on games like Battlefield and Amnesia. He wasn't very well known in the community, but I want to include him since his community involvement has recently boosted his social media popularity. And he does reviews of snapshots every week, which is very interesting because you get a review from someone who actually participated in the snapshot. Also, right now he's playing Minecraft Ultra Hardcore with RICHMC, and I find that very interesting. It's an example of how he gets involved in the community by playing this Ultra Hardcore. If you check his YouTube channel, he has many videos, including Minecraft gameplay and review analyses. And obviously, like these players, most of the people Mojang hired had played Minecraft before or had contributed something to the community. I wanted to focus on the most well-known and influential ones. Otherwise, I'd need to cover every Mojang developer, and there's not information on all of them. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like. See you next time. Goodbye.